Whether your garden is a small, intimate courtyard or a giant historic mansion, the goal is the same, to carve out your own little piece of paradise. Today we take a garden tour and look at the handiwork of gardeners who have done just that. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned as we garden smart from New York.
The Safer brand organic lawn care program makes house calls. By ordering online, the lawn you want can be delivered right to your door. The Safer brand organic lawn care program is a proud sponsor of public television and GardenSMART.
I should be arrested for crimes against potted plant kind. My house is where plants came to die.
Miracle Grow potting mix is designed to help grow big, beautiful plants. Everyone grows with Miracle Grow.
Hey there, little Red Riding Hood. You sure are looking good.
Long Island, New York is a mere 118 miles long by 23 miles wide, yet it houses a population of over 7.5 million people. It was once called the Gold Coast due to its tremendous wealth and opulence. Its residents included Vanderbilts and Guggenheims, as well as famous entertainers such as Groucho Marx. One of the premier manors on Long Island is the Glen Cove Mansion, that was the estate of Charles Pratt and typified the amazing residences that inspired The Great Gatsby. Today, Long Island is still well known for its beauty and charm, as well as its love of gardens, and today we'll explore some of its hidden gems. One of the best parts of our job is finding the tucked away diamonds in the rough gardens that most folks would never see. In many cases, there's a rich story that accompanies them and chronicles the passion and determination of the men and women behind these amazing places. Today we visit the gardens of Steve Young and Skip Lowell. Both learned how to garden by starting small and seeing what works. Over the years, their gardens have evolved into their own versions of paradise and also reflect their unique personalities. Today we'll discuss what it takes to build a beautiful garden and how to work with dynamic plant combinations. Steve and Skip will give us a behind-the-scenes tour and discuss how they overcame the challenges they encountered, as well as the many unanticipated surprises they found along the way. I'm here today with Steve Young, who is an avid home gardener as well as a consummate plant collector. Steve, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for coming, Eric. Great to have you.
Can't wait to see your garden.
Excellent. Let's do it.
All right. Steve, your garden looks absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Tell me, how did you get started as a gardener?
Well, I got started kind of late. I started off as an estate manager for a large estate around the Gold Coast area, Long Island, and it was owned by a not-for-profit, so the budget was really small. And I really enjoyed the gardening aspects of it, and I really enjoyed the research part of it too. I found it really fascinating, especially that two plants could be the same plant, but be such different varieties, that they would be totally looking different, and that really got me excited about collecting plants and kind of growing a collection and watching them develop and watching them grow and letting the design grow from there. So that's what I've really enjoyed about gardening.
Some of my favorite gardens are the ones that are designed and developed by effectively folks who don't have a garden design degree, but they their intent is to look at what the plants are doing, figure out how they work well together. And I would imagine that your experience as an estate manager would be wonderful for translating that into what you're doing here in your front yard.
Well, it allowed me a lot of time for practice and experimentation and research. And now when I design around here, I really think about designing with textures of plants and colors of foliage and textures of foliage, as opposed to the flowers and the flower color, and then when they do bloom, it kind of becomes icing on the cake, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's very important to remember. We're going to be looking at the foliage of a plant through the lion's share of the season. The bloom is just the occasional sneeze.
Exactly, yeah.
See, if you would, give me a little overview of your garden. You know, how many plants do you have here? How long have you been gardening this space, and how did you approach the design of it?
Well, it's about 1/6 of an acre, so it's a small lot. When it first came here, it was very straight lines. So we really tried to create a lot of curves and a lot of different ways of shaping the garden beds that kind of pulls you into other parts of the garden. It's about 300 varieties. So it's quite a collection, and it's been really fun to collect. You know, one of the things I really tried to think about is I tried to take in a lot of different information from catalogs and from gardening books and gardening magazines and design books, and try to really take in that information and then think about, what did I want to use? You know, just because it says I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do this, or I should do this, what do I really want to do? And try to create a garden that's really what I want it to be. And I really think that I've done that, and I continue to do that as the garden develops and as it matures. And it's really enjoyable to see the plants develop and grow and mature.
Yeah. You know, with every individual garden that we visit, everyone is a very different experience, and what you're getting is a little piece of the gardener's personality. And the collector's gardens are particularly interesting to me because it's, you know, it really is just a smattering of the plants that they find really interesting as they're going through catalogs, visiting nurseries, and I find it fascinating to see what the collector does when they get back to their garden, how they incorporate that into, you know, in the case of your space, you've got these, you know, wonderful, you know, broad grass, winding, you know, rows and some really, really interesting plants. How do you approach when you get that perfect plant, bring it home, how do you approach the process of figuring out exactly where that's supposed to go?
You know what I think about is I think about what other plants I want it to be with. You know, and I try to think about in combinations what plant would look good with this other plant and why. You know, is it because it has a little bit of gold on the rim, and then this other plant is really bright gold foliage, and then this other plant next to it might be kind of grassy, textured, and another one might have like purple foliage, you know, to contrast with the gold. So I kind of think of groupings as I go along and decide how I want each individual area to look.
So are you one of the gardeners who also goes in later with a shovel and then moves that plant that didn't work there? And...
Yes, I'm guilty. Absolutely. You know, sometimes it doesn't quite look right, or sometimes it just doesn't grow in that area the way I want it to. You know, it just might be happier in another area, and sure enough, I'll move it somewhere else, and it really does what it's supposed to, comes into its full glory, seems really happy. And I'm glad I moved it, so I'll move something else in and experiment.
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember when we're gardening, is that it's a progression. And oftentimes the first space that we pick for it is not where it's ultimately going to end up, and just having the flexibility and the creativity of making sure that the right plant ultimately ends up in the right place.
I think that's the fun of it too.
Yeah. One of the challenges in a collector's garden can be making all the plants play well together, as we discussed earlier.
Sure.
And I was wondering if you could share with us some of those pleasant surprises, or maybe some things that worked well by design in your garden.
Well, one of the things I've really liked doing is combining butterfly bush and bleeding heart. And the reason being is that the bleeding heart, you know, comes into its glory in the early spring, just around the same time that you're hard pruning back your butterfly bush. So instead of having an empty space there, you have the bleeding heart there, and then as the bleeding heart's starting to decline, you have the butterfly bush growing up and taking that space. And so I find them to be really great partner plants, especially for a garden that has limited space.
Yeah, that's a good point. And especially in tight gardens, we have plants that perform at different times of the year, and we don't have to necessarily put them in separate places. It's, you know, it's a great planting tip to have them occupy the same footprint, knowing that as one is declining, the other one's coming on. And it's a tip that we see oftentimes employed with bulbs, which, you know, most bulbs are going to bloom early in the spring, and then we've got their foliage that's just kind of declining throughout the mid part of the season. It's not always the most attractive thing to look at, but we do need to leave the foliage on so that all the energy that's been produced in those leaves is able to be returned to the bulb so that we get a nice bloom next year. And I've seen anything from annuals that grow into the bulbs. In your garden, you've got a wonderful example of geraniums that are coming up through your tulips, and in time they're going to completely cover that foliage, and it allows you the luxury of being able to let that foliage stay, but it doesn't look unsightly at all.
Exactly, I think they work really well together. You know, I was also thinking about ornamental grasses, how we cut them down in the early spring, and there's an empty space there, and then quince that really is beautiful in the spring, and to partner a quince behind an ornamental grass so that you really get to enjoy it while you've cut down the grass, and then have the grass grow up in front of the quince, you're really not missing much because it doesn't look so great in the off season.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Another combination that I noticed as we were walking through the garden was your use of Deutzia Chardonnay pearls, which is one of my favorite shrubs. Wonderful chartreuse foliage and just mountains of white flowers. And you've paired those in a couple places with these really neat hostas that are gold rim hostas, and so you're picking up some of the color characteristics that end up being very, very compatible between those two plants.
Yeah, I really like doing that a lot. I think it's fun, it's playful, and it's fun to have a playful sense of gardening.
Steve, especially in gardens that don't have a lot of space, one of the ways that we talked about using plants together in succession, but another way that we can get, a bunch of different views and maximize our space is using vertical elements. You've done a great job of that with a number of really interesting standards. Tell us about that.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I really enjoy making standards out of vines or shrubs that would normally be not grown as a tree or a small tree. And I really enjoy the process. Basically just taking a plant like a hydrangea paniculata, a weeping beech, cotinus, or a certain type of crepe myrtle, and working on from year to year, just pruning off the side branches and getting it to about the height that I want it to be and letting it do its thing. It's really fun.
Wonderful. Now, are you starting these off as mature plants? Or are you starting it off as just a very small plant?
Usually I'll start them just as small plants. The hydrangea paniculata started off just about this size.
Wow.
And same with the wisteria, which we're working on now. We're in about our second season. And eventually it'll be about 6 feet tall.
Wow. It's a good tip for gardeners to think about starting with small plants. Oftentimes it can be tempting to put something large in. One of the biggest advantages starting with something small, outside of just the relationship that you develop with that plant over time, one of the biggest advantages is that they integrate into the native soil so much better when you start them small.
Exactly.
You don't end up with the circling roots that occur in larger containers. And it gives you time as a gardener to figure out how that plant is going to integrate into your landscape.
Exactly. I really enjoy that part of the process.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for being with us today. You've done such an amazing job of taking all these rare and unusual plants, crazy variegated plants, all different kinds of foliage and textures, and marrying them in together into a wonderful design that feels intimate and is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thanks for coming, Eric. I really appreciate it, you being here.
Thanks. Our second stop on today's garden tour is the home garden of Skip Lowell. Skip, thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Eric. Welcome.
Skip, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm retired now, but I started off in college at Syracuse University College of Forestry, and I was majored in wood and chemistry, and later learned a lot about plants, of the structure and nature of things. I found it very interesting.
Wonderful. Now, what gave you the crazy idea to build this wonderful garden at your home?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because I didn't start gardening until about 20 years ago when Linda and I returned from France, Giverny, and visited Monet's garden. And it just thrilled us so much that we wanted to have our own, you know.
Yeah.
And Linda said, "Hey, can we do that?" And I said, "Well, maybe."
Yeah,
And
that's one of the great things about wonderful, you know, public gardens is that they inspire folks to get involved in gardening, and what a great story. That's
Yeah, yeah, that was just thrilling to think that we could do something, and we just dug right in, and there we go.
awesome. Well, I've heard a lot of great things about your garden. Let's go tour it.
Okay, great.
Skip, when you decided to build a garden, you definitely don't mind jumping in with both feet.
We went in big. We were standing up on the deck and overlooking a yard that had truly grown in. English ivy was taking over faster than you could imagine. It was just a waste. So we decided to dig in big, as you say, and got the idea of 3 different partitions, basically, for the garden.
Wonderful. So how did you handle that site? English ivy can be hard to get rid of. Did you have to bring equipment in, or was this a hand job?
Yes, we did bring in, my friend is a builder, and we brought in an expert bobcat operator. Wow. And so we cut in some key features like the stream that leads down from the waterfall and leads into the pond, and of course he carved that depression out and made some berms and used the logs to back up the berms and scraped off all the ivy, and bingo, you had a lot of brown dirt.
Wonderful. And so you went back in with some of these beautiful flowering shrubs initially, right?
Yes, we did. We found a couple of closeout gardens that had these rhododendrons that were sitting around right now, and they were small, of course. I've kept these pruned back and bought a lot of them on a closeout price, and some andromedas and some azaleas. So that's how we got started with the big plants to provide the bones.
Now let's talk about the hardscape. You've really creatively used a lot of stonework for your walls, and then also for this nice patio that we're sitting on.
Yes, this is thanks to a salvage, a big pile of rocks that was at the new Cinema Art Center, and they used it for curbs. But when they did the renovation, you can still see the yellow curb marks that were on these blocks. I believe they came over on a sailing ship.
Tell me about your grotto area, and then also these really nice stone waterfalls that you built.
Yeah, the waterfalls are made out of Pennsylvania fieldstone. It's easy to lay up. So we've got this 30-foot stream that feeds the main pond, and it drips down from the upper pond there, and we used to have a lot more water lilies, but now we have a lot of yellow flag iris that have grown in a very naturalized way.
Certainly one of the most interesting garden rooms that you have in your garden is this amazing grotto. It's obviously a place that you've put a lot of energy into.
Yes, it's one of great pride and a lot of work, as you say. Started off, well, I need a way to get up to the upper level of this garden, and so prowling around on the early internet and found this guy who was a quarryman in Pennsylvania, and I said, I need all these different types of stones. I don't want regular skids. Send me 16 skids with steps and big ones, flat ones, everything you can think of, and that's what he did. We had a big flatbed truck here with 16 skids on it.
Wonderful. Well, it definitely transports you into something that feels like old world Europe, and it's got a very, very grown-in look to it now. Really nice space. So what are some of the plants that you grow in this space, Skip?
Well, above your head you got Leucothea hanging over, and on the other side you have this willow leaf cotoneaster, so that kind of gives you that sense of plants growing in. And on the floor we've got some silver edge fern naturalized in here, and yellow flag iris, and if I had time I'd have some caladium in here too.
Great. You've done such a nice job of creating this very whimsical garden where around every turn and corner there's a really neat little display that's very intentional. And Skip, what are some of the sections you'd like to highlight?
Well, this euchre garden you're looking at is a beautiful, colorful highlight. I just love the plant. It seems to thrive right here in this partial sun.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also have quite a few shade perennials on the property as well, don't you?
Yes, indeed. I have a lovely fern garden next to an old-fashioned antique fence underneath the pergola, and that's charming.
Wonderful. Yeah, I noticed off of one of the paths as well, you've got a really nice stand of just some beautiful rare hostas, and there's something that's, to me, so nice and almost lush and tropical feeling about that foliage.
I totally agree. The hosta is just the gentlest plant you'd want to look at.
Right.
And the leaves are so large, and it seems to thrive underneath those yew trees in the shade.
Well, I guess the punctuation point of your whole garden is your pond, right?
It is.
Yeah, let's go take a look at that.
You bet.
As you mentioned earlier, the pond was one of the oldest and original features of your garden, and now it's this wonderfully well grown in, mature water feature. It looks great, Skip.
Thank you. It's been an evolution. It started off with a lot of water lilies from native areas, and now it's changed to a lot of yellow flag iris and arrowhead, which I just delighted, as you can see there. And unfortunately, I got the duckweed along with it, but that's another thing.
No doubt. I want you to talk a little bit about the moss that you have established here. For some gardeners, they hate moss. For other gardeners, and they fight it. For other gardeners, they fight to get moss. And you have a really nice, this is like a soft woodland carpet that I love. How were you able to establish that?
Well, I just love this moss, and it's come in naturally, and it's because the soil here is a relatively acid pH. So what I learned was that if you put acid fertilizer, you promote the growth of moss.
Okay.
So I've promoted it on the paths and leads off in different directions, and you don't have to mow it.
Right, right. Very, very low maintenance, and of course it looks very natural and, like I said, very soft. I want you also to comment on the, you've got this wonderful little, partition here in the back. It's basically a garden wall, which is this lovely green bamboo.
Yeah, and it's 40 foot high. It started off probably 30 feet with 1-inch canes, and now I'm getting 40 or so new canes every year, and they're 2 inches in diameter, the new ones. And
wow.
The noise of it swaying in the breeze is one of the delights, and you can hear it from way up on the deck.
Skip, thank you so much for being with us today. Your garden is lovely, and it's definitely been a tremendous labor of love for you.
Well, thanks for coming, and this is nirvana for me. And I see Linda over there, and she's my partner and brings the garden inside with lovely cuttings every day, and that's a thrill. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you, Skip.
Another show, another amazing garden. We hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed producing it. If you watch the show, you know we travel the country visiting beautiful gardens. Well, we have a surprise in store for several in the audience. To learn more about the surprise, visit our website at GardenSMART.com.
The Safer Brand Organic Lawn Care program makes house calls. By ordering online, the lawn you want can be delivered right to your door. The Safer Brand Organic Lawn Care program is a proud sponsor of public television and GardenSMART.
I should be arrested for crimes against potted plant kind. My house is where plants came to die.
Miracle Grow potting mix is designed to help grow big, beautiful plants. Everyone grows with Miracle Grow.
Hey there, little Red Riding Hood.
There are few things more special than spending a day with a gardener in their garden as they share with us their passion for plants, as well as the many lessons that they've learned over the years. If you have questions about anything you've seen today, visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com. Remember, even if you're a master gardener, there's always more to learn. So join us next week for more great gardening tips and ideas as we garden smart.